how do you start? I mean, how do you get teachers to actually start trying this stuff? You don't want to force them to do it, and you can't change everything about your school right away. Where's the entry point? What are the levers that start to make this happen more? None of this is possible without the right faculty culture. That you need the faculty culture where teachers themselves are encouraged to use their imagination to try things, to collaborate, and to critique each other before they're willing to do that with students. So if you want your teachers to model that kind of pedagogy in their classrooms, they have to be able to do it with each other. So, for example, I mentioned that when teachers plan expeditions or projects in our schools, they actually have to present those to their colleagues and get feedback and critique and suggestions and cool critique as well, push. In most schools, teachers' work is totally private. The only time it's not private is when an administrator comes to sit in the back of their classroom for 5 minutes, and then they're totally nervous, or if there's a walkthrough from a leader or a district person. Otherwise, teachers often stay private in their work. The idea that teachers should be sharing their work publicly with their colleagues and getting critique on it is really groundbreaking. But it sets the stage for them to be able to do that with students. So modeling the kind of respect and push, challenge, critique in your professional culture, the kind of collaboration and kindness in your professional culture, to me, is the starting place. In our work with expeditionary learning, we help open new schools. And if it's a new school, it's pretty easy because you get fresh, excited teachers in to do a new thing. The hard work is most of our work, which we go into an existing school, often an underperforming school, and try to turn them around. And in that case, the professional culture is absolutely the most important thing we do, is figuring out how to get everyone on board to work together. And frankly, figuring out which people are not going to get on board and we need to counsel out so that we can really build a team where teachers are working together. And we spend the entire first summer building a new character code for the building, a character code that will be the same code for kids as it is for teachers. And then we define what would it look like as a teacher if you were to be respectful, courageous, compassionate with your colleagues. And we name those things because it's easy for a staff to say, we're going to be respectful of our colleagues. But if you name some descriptors of what that means, which means, for example, I show up for my recess duty on time. I never let people down. I don't badmouth other faculty members in the staff room or in the building. Like, you name those things, all of a sudden it's not so easy. And all of a sudden, teachers are actually accountable for a different kind of behavior. It's fine to say we're all respectful, but then if one of your teachers is not showing up for recess duty and letting other teachers down, or one of your teachers is badmouth, whatever they decide, or the criteria, then you actually have to deal with it as a faculty. So that process of naming the character values, what Tom Lacona calls the touchstones of your building, whatever you would call them, and having those consonant across kids and teachers, and then naming what does it look like for a first grader to do this, but what does it look like for a teacher to do this, and then holding teachers accountable to each other for it is where we start our process. The other one thing I wanted to mention before we get into some work again is my particular passion for making work public. And I think that that is a lever that starts to make change. Okay, there's a teacher in a school who does some work. It's not bad work, but the quality is not so great. And he saw a product here from younger students that was higher quality than he's seeing at his older students. How do you let a teacher know that without guilt tripping them? How do you say, I just looked at fourth grader work and it's better than some of our high school work? Like, what's going on? That's just punitive. So how do you create engines to push people toward quality? My first step is always make the work public. As long as the work stays within the purview of the classroom, then who knows how good it is and who's motivated. Once the work steps beyond the classroom, once it's being done for an audience beyond the classroom, everything changes. So the teacher stops being the audience for the work and starts being the coach. Let me give an example. In your schools, people, I'm sure, show up for student concerts or plays or sporting events. But rarely do we bring in people to look at the academic work of kids. if we can think of all the ways in which we have audiences for academic work, or could, like you saw in the opening video, it changes everything. Because no one would put on a play just for the teacher. The teacher is the coach, the director, getting them ready for a real audience. You don't practice with your soccer team for just practice purposes. You practice to get ready for a game where people's families come and they watch. A chorus concert is for an audience. It's the audience that raises the level. So how can we have teachers presenting their work to their colleagues, presenting their work to their district? How can we have students presenting their work to other classes? How can we take the work of students and bring it beyond the classroom walls? And by making it public, it's a step beyond. So just to point out, in this, one of the booklets that I gave out, which is this Building Character in EL Schools, there's a list of strategies and structures that's in the middle of some of the things we do. The character values, the staff norms. That's in the center of this, you got to pull it out of the paper-clipped piece. And of those structures, 5 of them are structures for making work public. So in that bulleted list here, it says, right under crew meetings, it lists community meetings that feature the great work of kids. Underneath that, student-led conferences, where students have to present their work formally to their parents. Next, passage presentations, portfolio presentations, where students have to present their work to a panel. Underneath that, celebrations of learning, which is what you saw at King Middle School this morning. And underneath that, work galleries in the hallways that are public galleries for the quality of work that people do. Those are 5 different structures for making work public. And when we discussed this, Eric pointed out to me that, well, that big civil rights project that you showed, that's bigger than we can't do that all the time. Like, isn't there smaller structures where you could make work public? And I think exactly right. It's just the right push. I'm a big fan of the structures of student-led conferences and passage presentations. I'll give one particular example and then show one video, which I wouldn't have shown, but thanks to Eric, I just queued this one up. I went to work for with a middle school, and most of the teachers were on board in the middle school. They were excited to join EL and start doing this work, but not every teacher. And in particular, there was an 8th grade math teacher who said, I was hired to teach math, and I'll be darned if you're going to make me do anything else than teach math. I mean, and he wasn't a bad math teacher, but he had been there a long time, and he was not going to do anything else. So when we were trying to think of how to get projects involved and stuff, there was no chance he was going to be a part of it. And he said, and if you want to threaten me, the union will be behind me on it. So it was like right away, it was a power struggle. So as a consultant to the school, coming in as a coach, I didn't want to get in the middle of the power struggle. So here's how we avoided it. Rather than ask them to do any projects, the very first structure we set up in their first year with Expeditionary Learning was an 8th grade exit passage presentation. Every 8th grade student would have to present his or her work to a panel. And on that panel was a teacher, a community member, and a high school student. And this is a small town where the high school was right next to the middle school, so they all know each other. Interestingly, the high school students were the highest stakes for these kids. They most wanted to impress the high school student on their panel. And because this was a fairly large middle school, we had to have these presentations going on simultaneously all day long for 2 days. We had a lot of kids. So these presentations were 20 minutes long, but at any given moment, there were 5 of them going on in the building at once, and then the panels rotated. And we managed to do this all the first year. Interestingly, the other teachers got really excited about creating quality work and reflections and projects and thoughtful assessments that the kids could speak about clearly. Everyone except the math teacher, who just kept teaching his same old way. And I'll tell you, he was incredibly embarrassed when each student had to present her learning, and she said, here's what we're doing in this is evidence of my growth in English, here are my papers, I'm going to read a section of it. And then it got to math, all they said was, here are my tests. I got 100 on this, I got an 80 on this, I got a 70 on this, I got an 80 on this, my average is 78. And all of a sudden he thought, maybe I better do something differently. It's really embarrassing that my students can't talk about what they've learned, that they're not being able to articulate anything deep or any connections to it. So without actually forcing him, all of a sudden his curriculum changed the next year. He was not a bad math teacher, but he was an angry guy. And yet he had some pride in his math teaching. And the next year their math presentations were quite different because it was public, and all of a sudden it wasn't just in his classroom anymore. Those were beautiful presentations. The very next year, the 7th grade decided to do them, and then the 6th grade decided to do them. And I think that was the lever for transforming the school, that teachers wanted their students to be able to explain what they were learning in a deep way. I just queued up a short video, which is not a passage presentation. It's a student-led conference. Every one of our schools has student-led conferences. Your schools may as well. If some of you are skeptical that it would be hard to do, I have student-led conferences videotaped at all different age levels, but I chose a very young student because those are often ages where you think, yeah, I wouldn't actually start that young. So let me play that one now for you.
My name is Trinity. I am in kindergarten and my school is called Bel Air Elementary School. Welcome you with our words. We welcome you with our hearts.
First thing that our students do is they greet their parents or whoever is there to listen to their learning.
And we say you like a high five, handshake, or a hug. The second thing we do is our welcome song.
To get kindergartners ready for their student-led conference,
Here are two of my reading strategies.
we just take it a little bit by little. Students will share their learning targets before they talk about each page that they are sharing.
I can demonstrate how to use ventricles when reading. It's a dragonfly.
How do you know that's a dragonfly?
Because a dragonfly has these things. I can stretch outwards to hear all the sounds. And g, g, and g, g, and g. To do a student conference, you can be in 1st grade, 2nd grade, or 3rd grade, or 4th grade, or 5th grade, or you can be in kindergarten. I can buy this one to number. We put it dots to make it equal the sometimes how you may doing whatever kind of grade you're in.
Are you getting two numbers?
10 plus 10. You have to practice and learn how to do your conferences before you do it, and your teacher can help you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
We practice for our conferences in our classrooms. We do a fishbowl. I showed the students what it would look like and what it will sound like. And then a student will do a fishbowl, and a student will share their learning and do their portfolio for the class.
That's yours? Cool.
Thank you. Final draft of a mark. These are the things to make the modern. Focus, eyes, symmetry. One side is like the other side, and the wings, the body parts, and chins and legs. What I like about it is the colors because it looks beautiful. And the fix is symmetry because I think this one is more than that.
The last thing they will talk about is their science. So we've done scientific drawings and their learning and how they got to that final draft. They are in insect expert groups.
My insect expert group is Ladybug.
And they will share their scientific drawings and their learning so far.
It works abdomen. This is kind of school related, but we're gonna do another one. The States has 3 types of ladybugs. They are red and orange and yellow. Yellow.
So that was our first draft, right? So what would you like to work on for your next draft?
Finger spaces.
Okay. That's a great one.
You will practice and practice to get really better. Thank you for coming to us in the comments. If you have any, and then you can tell about what you do to get better and better, and you can tell them all about it.